In this video we're going to try to understand more about obtaining postback data within our server control so that first of all we can be notified when something changed about our server control, so the client types something into a text box or whatever the case might be, and then the second thing we want to know what the old value and the new value was, and to be able to raise that up to the web form that hosts our server control in case they want to write any code on that side that deals with the change in the postback data. So in the case of a text box, again, it would be the text changed event that's fired. So let's go ahead and create a new project, and we're going to call this Custom Controls Postback. We want to make sure that we have a ASP.NET web application, Custom Controls Postback. And after a moment, we can see it in our Solution Explorer. The solution is named the same as our project. We're going to select this and add a new project to the solution. Make sure to click Add to Solution, or you'll wind up with a whole new solution with just one project in it. Here we're going to select Web Control Library. This will house our LVS text box that we'll create. We'll call the project itself CC Postback Data, and we'll select OK. First thing I'll do is delete the default one, and I want to add one back, a new web custom control, and again we're going to call this LVS text box. So just to make sure that we get it working and we add it to the toolbox, I'm going to change the render method and then compile it. So input type equals text, name equals, and remember what we did before, me dot unique ID, and value equals, and then our text property that comes by default, and the closing tag. So that should work just fine. Let's go ahead and build this. Go to our toolbox. Whoops, we need to switch over to our web form from the Custom Controls Postback project, and now we can go to our Custom Controls tab, and we want to select Customize Toolbox. Customize Toolbox pops open. We're going to select the .NET Framework components, select Browse, and we want to select My Projects, Custom Controls Postback, CC Postback Data, bin directory, and we find our assembly. Select Open and OK, and now we have our LVS text box here. I'm going to drag and drop it on our design surface, and we get a nicely rendered text box control. So now that we have that infrastructure working, let's go back to our text box and start talking about what it will take to be notified that a change has been made in our text box, and then secondly allow us to raise that event up to our web form. So to do this, remember we talked about implementing a interface, and that interface is iPostbackDataHandler. Now the first thing that we'll need to do is implement a method called loadPostData. So we're going to create our own here right under the render method. I'm just going to go ahead and paste in some code that I've typed up, and we'll take a look at it. First, we created a public overridable function, loadPostData, and notice at the very bottom that this function implements iPostbackDataHandler.loadPostData. Now, the purpose of this is twofold. First of all, it allows us to do the assessment of whether our text box has changed or not. So we are responsible for taking a look at the old value as it was contained within the viewState property and comparing it with the new value that we get from the two items that were passed into our function, the post data key and then the collection. The collection is going to have the name value pairs of all items that were posted back to our web form, not just for this control, but for all controls. Specifically, we want the single entry in the collection that corresponds to the post data key. So you can see here, I'm first of all creating two variables, an old text value that's going to contain our text property, and then the new text property, we set that equal to the post collection, and specifically one item in that collection called post data key, both of which are passed into us as a result of implementing this load post data function. Now, one other thing that I want to make note of here, it sends us this post collection as a system.collections.specialized.nameValue collection. So if you want to work with this collection, you may want to import that namespace, system.collections.specialized. So we've already talked about the method signature for the load post data. We've created two variables, old text and new text, and populated them with the respective values. And now comes the comparison. If the old text equals the new text, then return false, because nothing's changed at all. However, if the new text is not equal to the old text, then we're going to need to return a true from our load post data function. Additionally, we are now responsible for updating the property. It is totally within our control, so we have to take the text property and set it equal to the new text. So we're setting the old text equal to the new text. Now we can choose to perform any validation we want to change the value. If somebody types in a P, we can set it to an X. Whatever you want to do, you can do it here, but you are responsible for doing that. So that's the purpose of the load post data that you'll need to implement. Now, before we go on, I just want to remind you about the control execution lifecycle. So let's take a look at it in the help. Control execution lifecycle. And what we've done at this point is processed the postback data by implementing our own load post data method. We have to return a true or a false. If we return a true, then we're going to be able to implement the raise post data changed event, which will get fired by ASP.NET to let us know that something's changed, and now we will need to in turn raise that event back to our client, the web form. So now let's do that. I just wanted to show you where these ideas fit into the context of the life cycle. And so I'm going to paste in some more code. This time we are going to implement the raise post data changed event. It implements iPostbackDataHandler dot raise postback data changed event. And here we're going to call an onTextChanged method that we haven't implemented yet, passing in no event args. So this will only get fired, this code here will only get fired off if we return a true from our load post data method. The next thing we're going to need to do is to declare the TextChanged event handler. This allows it to be used on the web form, to be captured on the web form, as we'll do in just a moment. And I've given you kind of the convention here, public sub, whatever the control name is, underscore text changed, and then the sender and event args and so on. And then finally we're going to want to create the onTextChanged method. And so when the raise postback data changed event occurs, is going to fire the onTextChanged event that we're going to create here, and this does a raise event, notifying all of the delegates that implement text changed, i.e. our web form, that the event has now fired and they are allowed to write code to capture that event. So now let's go ahead and save what we have here and build it. And we're not quite done if it builds correctly. Very good. So what we'll want to do is go to the code behind for this page, and now we need to create our instance of our delegate here and capture the event. LVS text box 1, as you can see, is the name of our instance of the LVS text box. Underscore text change. Again, we can name this anything we want to, but we need to keep this convention because it's most common. It's the one that Microsoft uses. Can't type. Event args, and we'll talk about event args in a future video. I didn't want to complicate things just yet. LVS text box 1 dot and text changed appears, and so now here we can just do response dot write text changed, or we could actually do LVS text box 1 dot text equals my text. And I hope that'll work. I haven't tested that part of it out. Just did that off the top of my head. Then I think we need to do one more thing. Let's go back to the actual web form itself, and we're going to need a button to post it because we did not implement the iPostback event handler from the previous video, which would actually allow us to submit the form every time somebody types a single letter here. We didn't want that functionality, but we will need some control to actually fire the postback event. So hopefully this will work. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay, the first time I'm going to run it, I'm not going to change the text box at all. I'm just going to click the button, and you'll notice that nothing happens. That's great. That's by design. We only want the events to fire if the text is changed. So let's just go ahead and type in a letter, the letter A, click the button, and now we get text changed and my text in our text box, just like we programmed our web form to do whenever the text change event was fired. So I hope this helped you understand a little bit more about how the iPostback data handler works and about how to handle and raise events that occur as